My husband stole 2.8 million rubles from our daughter's savings and ran off to his mistress. But the twins just smirked at me. Mom, don't worry, they said. We've taken care of everything. What my 17-year-old daughters did next shocked even me. My name is Klara Markova, and I always thought I had a perfect, happy family. Or at least I thought I did, until that Tuesday morning when my whole life came crashing down. I was sitting in our kitchen in Khimki, sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling through the banking app on my phone. A normal, quiet start to the day. Outside, the May sun shone brightly, birds chirped, and kids were laughing in the courtyard. Everything seemed ordinary, even peaceful. I opened the account where I had been saving for my daughter's education, expecting to see the familiar numbers I had been carefully building for years. 17 years of hard work, sacrifice, and saving. All for this moment. I clicked to refresh the balance and froze. 0. Nothing. The screen showed exactly 0 rubles. My breath caught in my throat. I rubbed my eyes, thinking the app was just glitching. I refreshed the page. Again. And again. But the result never changed. Those cruel, mocking zeros stared back at me, as if fate itself was laughing at me. My hands shook violently, and the coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. 17 years. 17 years I had worked tirelessly at a small accounting office, picked up extra jobs on weekends, counted every ruble, bought clothes on sale, and forgot the last time I had taken a proper vacation, all so that my twin girls, Lisa and Natasha, could attend a decent university without drowning in loans like I once had. And now it was all gone. Every single ruble. I grabbed my phone and dialed Boris, my husband of 20 years. The line was dead. I tried again. Nothing. A heavy, crushing weight settled in my chest, making it hard to breathe. Boris, call me back, now. I whispered into the phone, my voice shaking. Something's happened to the account. The money, all the money is gone. I hung up and stared at the phone screen, silently praying that the numbers would magically reappear. But they didn't. Then, I heard footsteps. Lisa and Natasha were walking into the kitchen, ready for breakfast before heading off to the Lyceum. They seemed calm, almost too calm, like they had already seen what had happened, and had done something about it. I looked at them, my heart pounding, my mind racing. How could they? What had they done? I couldn't even begin to imagine. How do you tell them? How do you explain to your 17-year-old daughters that their future just went up in smoke? Good morning, Mom, Lisa said, tossing her backpack onto the kitchen table. At her age, she was practically my twin. Dark hair, serious brown eyes, the same determined expression I used to have. She had always dreamed of going to Sechenov University to study medicine. She had dreams that now felt completely out of reach. Right behind her came Natasha, always glued to her phone. Our little computer genius, forever coding, tweaking, or hacking just for fun. She had her heart set on the computer science faculty. Now both of their dreams seemed impossible, vanished in an instant. I probably looked worse than I felt because both girls froze and stared at me. Mom, what's wrong? Natasha asked first, putting her phone aside. I opened my mouth, but the words got stuck. How do you say it? How do you crush all their hopes with just one sentence? Finally, I managed to choke out the words. The money for your education, it's gone. All of it. I expected tears, screams, hysteria. I expected a million questions about how this could have happened. But instead, something strange happened. Lisa and Natasha exchanged a look. Not the panicked, confused look I had expected. No, it was something different. Something inside me twisted with a bad, uneasy feeling. They were smirking. Mom, don't worry, Lisa said calmly, her voice steady and sure. We've got this. What do you mean, got this? I asked, wiping my tears. Got what? What do you mean? Natasha sat down next to me and patted my shoulder, like she was the adult and I was the child. Trust us, Mom. Everything will be okay. I stared at them, completely bewildered. This was the worst day of my life, and yet they were acting like they knew something I didn't. Worse, they didn't even look surprised. Girls, I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. The money for your education, for your future, it's all gone. Your father won't answer the phone. I don't even know what happened or how to fix it. Lisa and Natasha exchanged another glance. And this time, I saw it clearly in their eyes, something that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was satisfaction. Satisfaction. I couldn't believe it. My own daughters, smirking in the middle of what should have been a disaster. And yet, somehow, I knew that they were already thinking of a way to take control, to fix what seemed unfixable. Mom, Natasha whispered, her voice low, there are things you don't know yet. Things we found out about Dad. What things? I breathed, my voice trembling. But before they could answer, both girls grabbed their backpacks and headed for the door. We have to get to school, Lisa said calmly, putting on her coat. But don't worry about the money. We promise. Everything will be taken care of the way it's supposed to be. And just like that, they were gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen, staring at the shattered mug on the floor and the zeros blinking on my phone screen. I sat there thinking, what in the world? Do my daughters know that I don't? The rest of the day dragged on like torture. I called Boris 17 more times. 17. Every time the same thing. Subscriber unavailable or out of network coverage. Panic gnawed at me, building with every failed call. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept refreshing the banking app, praying like a fool, that the numbers would magically reappear. By the time the girls returned from school, I was pacing the apartment like a caged animal. I had called the bank twice, hoping for answers, but both times I heard the same chilling words. Access to the account had been granted to a legal holder via notarized power of attorney. It hit me like a punch. Boris, my husband, has taken everything. Every last ruble. Mom, you look terrible, Natasha said as she came through the door. Did you even eat today? No, I didn't eat, I admitted. How could I think about food when my whole life felt like it had been thrown into a pit? Sit down, Lisa said gently, guiding me to the couch. We need to talk. Both girls sat across from me. The mischievous smirks from the morning were gone. Their faces were serious now, as if they were about to reveal something that would change everything forever. What you're about to hear, it's going to hurt, Natasha began, opening her laptop. But you need to know the truth about Dad. My heart was already in pieces, but somehow I felt it would be completely crushed by what was coming. Lisa took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I was typing a history paper on Dad's computer because mine froze. I accidentally opened his email instead of the printer settings, and what I saw, she paused, swallowing hard. What did you see? I whispered, though inside I already feared the answer. Emails. Hundreds of them, Lisa continued. From a woman named Irina Sokolova. The name hit me like a slap. I knew her. She was a project manager at Boris's construction company. Young, beautiful, fresh out of university. I had met her at corporate events. I remembered how she laughed at his jokes, how he would watch her with that look. That way he never looked at me. Natasha turned the laptop toward me. We saved everything before Dad could delete it, she said quietly. I stared at the screen. My world collapsed. Email after email between my husband and her. I miss you, one began. I'm waiting for tonight. Our future together. Even reading the subject lines made it hard to breathe. Keep scrolling, Lisa whispered. I did. Every word was like a punch to my chest. Every sentence, every line, felt like someone was shattering what was left of my heart. The emails had been going on for 7 months. 7 months. 7 months my husband had been writing to another woman, telling her he loved her. 7 months he was planning a new life, while I worked myself to the bone, saving every ruble for the future of our daughters. And I thought I had seen the worst. I was wrong. Look at this email from last week, Natasha said quietly, pointing at a message dated 5 days ago. I read it aloud with a trembling voice. Irina transferred the money today. That's it. 2.8 million from the savings account, plus another 900,000 from the reserve. All from our joint account. Soon we'll start a new life in Sochi. I can't wait to marry you and start over. Klara will find out soon. The girls will understand in time. I couldn't breathe. Literally couldn't. My chest tightened. My lungs refused to take in air. My husband hadn't just cheated on me. He had stolen the entire future of our children for a new life with his mistress. And as Lisa said softly, that was only part of it. He's been planning this for months, Lisa continued, her voice steady despite the storm raging around us. He already paid a deposit for the apartment. He was transferring the money in parts so you wouldn't notice. I looked at my daughters through blurry tears. How long? How long have you known about this? 3 months, Natasha admitted. We were trying to figure out what to do. We didn't want to hurt you, but we couldn't let him destroy the family or steal our future. And what did you do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, afraid of the answer. The girls exchanged a glance and, for the first time since this nightmare began, smiled. We gave him a taste of his own medicine, Lisa said. Natasha opened another tab on the laptop. Remember how I was taking that elective in information security and digital forensics? I nodded, confused, unsure where she was going with this. Well, Natasha continued, I documented everything. Every single message, every transaction, every plan he had made to ruin us. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. My daughters, my smart, brave daughters, they had been fighting back in their own way, quietly, carefully, making sure the truth would come to light, and that justice would be served. I couldn't believe it. In the middle of my despair, in the midst of the worst betrayal I had ever faced, they were the ones taking control. They weren't helpless, and they weren't panicking. They were planning, calculating, and protecting our family in a way that I never could have imagined. Every single email, every transfer, every lie, Natasha had captured it all. She created a digital trail proving that my husband had committed theft and betrayal. But even more important, she paused dramatically, making me lean in. I found their joint account, she said, her voice low and serious. The one where all our money is sitting. And then, with a sly, almost predatory smile, she added, and that's when things got really interesting. Let's just say, Irina Sokolova is in for a very unpleasant surprise when she tries to access those funds. Lisa leaned forward, her dark eyes shining with determination. Mom, Dad thinks he's the smartest man alive, she said, but he forgot one important thing. What thing? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He raised 2 daughters who are smarter than him, Lisa said firmly. And we're not going to let anyone destroy our family. For the first time that day, I felt something other than despair. Pride. My daughters had discovered their father's betrayal, yet they had not broken. They had stood up, quietly, strategically, and taken control. What happens now? I asked, my voice trembling, but filled with hope. Both girls smiled. And in that smile, I saw strength I had never noticed before. Now, Natasha said, we show Dad that the Markova women never give up without a fight. I needed to know everything, the full story of how my daughters uncovered Boris's betrayal and what they had been planning for the past 3 months while I lived in blissful ignorance. Start from the beginning, I said, sinking back onto the couch. Lisa and Natasha exchanged a glance, silently deciding who would go first. It was a Sunday in February, Lisa began. Remember when my laptop broke right before I had to submit an important history paper? I nodded. Those weekends had been stressful, and Lisa had been panicking about losing all her work. Dad offered me his computer in his office, Lisa continued. He said he would be away on business, and I could work without distractions. Her expression changed as she spoke, and I could sense the memory of that day still fresh in her mind. But he forgot to log out of his email. Natasha picked up the story. When Lisa called me to help with editing, we both saw it. A notification popped up from someone named Irina. The preview said, I can't stop thinking about last night. Darling, I feel like my whole world turned upside down last night. Lisa's voice trembled as she went on. We thought it was just a mistake at first. Maybe someone sent the wrong message. But then I suggested we check his sent folder. And that's when everything became clear. I know snooping isn't exactly right, Natasha said quickly, almost defensively. But something wasn't right, she continued. Dad had been acting strange lately. Always on his phone. Always at work. Always looking for any excuse to disappear from home. I immediately thought back to February. Boris had been distant, yes, but I had brushed it off, blaming it on work stress. He always complained about difficult clients, tricky construction projects. I even felt a little sorry for him. What did you find in his sent emails? I asked, though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know the answer. Everything, Lisa said simply. Everything. Months of correspondence, photos they had sent each other, plans for a future together. And worst of all, he had written about me. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. He talked to her about you. Personal things he had no right to share. Natasha opened a file on the laptop. He wrote that you're boring and predictable, she said quietly, her voice trembling. That you've let yourself go since giving birth. He complained that you work too much and don't pay enough attention to him. Every word felt like a slap to my face. 20 years of marriage, and this is how my husband described me to his mistress. But the worst part, Lisa said, her tone heavy, were the emails about money. Show me, I asked, though my heart was already pounding with fear. Natasha scrolled through the files. Here's one from March 15th, she said. I read it, and my blood ran cold. Irina wrote, You're right. We need a serious amount to start over. I have access to roughly 3.7 million rubles, your savings for their education, plus the reserve. Klara never checks the accounts closely. I'll transfer it gradually. She won't notice until it's too late. We'll have everything ready for the move. He had been planning this for months, I whispered, my hands shaking. It gets worse, Natasha said grimly. Look at the email from April. I opened the next file, and the room seemed to spin around me. Everything will be fine with the girls, the email read. Even reading that one line made my stomach twist. He was planning every step, calculating every detail, and I had been completely unaware while he secretly dismantled our family's future. They're smart enough, Natasha said. They'll get into university on scholarships. And Mom, if needed, you can take out loans. Our happiness matters more than their school plans. We deserve a new life. I stared at the screen in shock. My husband was willing to destroy our daughter's future for his selfish desires. That's when we decided we had to act, Lisa said firmly. We couldn't just sit there and watch Dad ruin our lives. And what did you do? I asked, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Natasha smirked, and for a moment, I saw that mischievous little girl who used to hack my tablet just to change her bedtime. We started our own investigation, Natasha said. I used my skills to track Dad's digital trail, every website, every account, every transaction. And I was on surveillance duty, Lisa added. I watched his behavior, noted every lie, even recorded his phone calls when he thought no one was listening. You recorded him? I gasped. Mom, we had to protect ourselves, Lisa said firmly. Dad was stealing from us. We needed proof. Natasha opened an Excel sheet on her laptop. Look, she said. I tracked every ruble. At first, it was small amounts, just like he planned. 30,000 here, 50,000 there. Always on the days you stayed late at work. I stared at the spreadsheet that my 17-year-old daughter had made. It was more detailed than any accounting report I had ever seen in my life. But Dad forgot one thing, Natasha said, her smile a mix of triumph and something almost frightening. I didn't just track what he took. I found out where it was going. And as soon as we found their joint account, Lisa added, we realized we could stop him. I looked at my daughters, a mixture of horror and awe gripping me. What exactly did you do? I asked, my voice trembling. Both girls smiled, and in their eyes, I saw the same determination I had once had when I fought to get into university, without a single ruble to my name. We decided, Natasha said slowly, that if Dad is playing with our future, we'll show him what real players look like. We had been planning for weeks, Natasha continued, opening a folder labeled Project Justice. We knew we had to be smarter than Dad and make sure he could never hurt you or us again. I stared at the screen, amazed. My teenage daughters had been running an entire secret operation right under my nose. First, we collected evidence, Lisa explained. Real evidence that could be used in court. Natasha opened a subfolder called Digital Evidence. The screen filled with screenshots, photos, saved emails, and bank statements. I learned to document everything without him noticing, Natasha said. Dad never realized I was tracking all his moves. How did you get access to his accounts? I asked, astonished. Dad isn't as smart as he thinks, Natasha smirked. One password everywhere, your birthday or your wedding anniversary. Once I figured that out, I had full access. I felt my heart tighten. Even the passwords were tied to me, and he was still planning to abandon our family. But the digital evidence alone wasn't enough, Lisa added. We needed to understand Irina, what she really wanted. So I created a fake profile. Natasha leaned closer, her voice low and triumphant. I became Agata Chikhanova, a 25-year-old marketer who had just moved to Moscow. I added Irina on VK and slowly became her online friend. I couldn't believe my ears. You tricked Dad's mistress? It was surprisingly easy, Natasha admitted. Irina loves attention. Within 2 weeks, she was telling Agata everything about her life, including the affair with a married man who was about to leave his wife. Lisa pulled out a notebook filled with meticulous notes. While Natasha worked on Irina, I studied Dad's habits, where he went when he left, how long he was gone. I even followed him a couple of times. You followed Dad? I gasped. That's dangerous. I was careful, Lisa assured me. I just needed to confirm my suspicions, and I was right. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he went to Karina's apartment in the southwest of the city, not working late like he told you. Natasha turned the screen toward me again, a sly grin on her face. But here's where it gets really interesting. From my conversations with Irina, I learned something Dad didn't even suspect. What exactly? I asked, my voice trembling. She has another man, the girls said in unison. I couldn't believe it. His name is Roman Chernov, Natasha explained. A wealthy restaurateur who owns several places in central Moscow. Irina has been seeing him for 4 months at the same time as your father. She's playing both of them. Yes, Lisa confirmed. And she even told Agata that she planned to take your father's money and run off with Roman to St. Petersburg to open a new restaurant. My head spun. Wait, so she never intended to be with your father at all? Nope, Natasha said cheerfully. She only wanted the money. She even laughed about it in her messages to Agata, saying, married men over 40, easy pickings. They're so desperate to feel young again. The betrayal was so deep and layered that, for a second, I almost felt sorry for Boris. Almost. But we weren't finished gathering information yet, Lisa continued. We needed to know exactly when Dad planned to make his move. So I hacked his calendar and draft emails, Natasha said casually, as if breaking into her father's accounts was an everyday thing for a teenager. You hacked his calendar? I whispered. Mom, it's not hard when someone uses the same password everywhere, Natasha said patiently. I watched as she pulled up a draft email he had been working on for weeks, his resignation letter from the construction company. Lisa leaned closer. He planned to quit this Friday, tell you about the divorce on Saturday, and be gone by Sunday. This weekend, I whispered, horrified. Yes, this weekend. Both girls confirmed. My stomach turned. In just 4 days, my husband was planning to destroy our family and vanish with all our money. But here's the best part, Natasha said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. We beat him to it. What do you mean? I asked, my heart pounding. We mean, Lisa said, smiling, a smile that was both sweet and terrifying, that Dad's plan is about to fail spectacularly. Natasha opened the final tab on the laptop. Mom, what if I told you that Irina Sokolova and Roman Chernov now know everything about each other? And Lisa added, Dad's boss knows he's been using company time and equipment for personal matters. Natasha finished triumphantly. The money he stole is already safe, right where it belongs. I stared at my daughters. They hadn't just uncovered Dad's betrayal, they had methodically torn his entire plan to pieces. My girls, I said slowly, my voice trembling. What exactly did you do? Yesterday, we set everything in motion, Lisa said, leaning back on the couch like a general surveying a battlefield after a victory. We called it Operation Karma, Natasha added, opening a timeline on her laptop. We had to plan everything so Dad wouldn't notice and wouldn't have time to cover his tracks. I leaned forward, fascinated and a little terrified by the cold, strategic thinking of my teenage daughters. The first phase began at 9 a.m., Lisa explained. While Dad was at work and you were at the office, I went to his construction company. Why did you go to his office? I asked, alarmed. I told him I was doing a school project on local businesses and asked to interview some employees, Lisa said calmly. But actually, I was there to plant evidence where Dad's boss would find it. Natasha pulled out a folder with printed documents. We picked the most compromising emails, ones where he bragged about using company computers for personal correspondence, long lunches with Irina, everything. I left them in the break room where Igor Petrovich Krulov, Dad's director, always drinks coffee after lunch, Lisa continued. I pretended to drop them by accident. I stared at my daughters in amazement. It was brilliant. The second phase happened at the same time, Natasha continued. Remember how I'd been talking to Irina for weeks, pretending to be Agata Chikhanova? I nodded. Yesterday, I told Irina that I saw her boyfriend, Roman, at a restaurant with another woman. I even sent her a photo. He was having dinner with his business partner. I made it look like he was cheating on her. Why? I asked, confused. Because I knew Irina would get jealous and confront Roman, Natasha explained. And when she does, she'll reveal everything about her backup plan with the married man who's giving her money. And that's exactly what happened, Lisa added with a sly grin. I sank back, feeling a mix of shock and awe. My daughters weren't just smart, they were fearless, creative, and completely in control. They had turned Dad's betrayal against him in a way that was calculated, precise, and, frankly, a little terrifying. Roman immediately suspected something was wrong and started trying to figure out who this married man was. So I helped, Natasha said calmly. I anonymously sent him screenshots, photos of Dad, fancy dinners, gifts, weekend trips. Everything paid for with our family's money. A sharp, satisfying feeling shot through me. I could almost feel Irina's web of lies crumbling around her. Roman went absolutely furious, Lisa said. Yesterday afternoon, he stormed into Karina's office, caused a huge scene in front of all her coworkers, called her a gold digger and a fraud, and then he left faster than a bullet. But the most interesting part, Natasha added with a gleam in her eye, was that Irina immediately called Dad, crying and begging him to come for her. And of course, Dad left work early and rushed over to her apartment, Lisa added. It was only then I realized the brilliance of their plan. While Dad was off consoling his mistress, Igor Petrovich, his boss, discovered the folder with all the evidence in the break room. Yes, the girls said in unison. But that wasn't the end, Natasha said, clicking her mouse. The third phase was the most important, the money. The money, I echoed, hardly able to breathe. While Dad was busy dealing with Irina's meltdown and his boss was calling an emergency meeting about workplace violations, Natasha was carrying out the main part of the plan. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I had been monitoring their joint account for weeks, she explained. I knew all the login details, the security questions, everything. How? I asked, my voice trembling. Dad used your maiden name as the answer to one security question. Natasha rolled her eyes. And Irina's birthday as the pin. Men are so predictable. At exactly 3:47 p.m. yesterday, Lisa checked the records. While Dad was calming Irina and his boss was gathering everyone for an urgent meeting, Natasha transferred all the money from their joint account back to our family account. Every single ruble. I couldn't believe it. Every last penny was safe. I sat back, overwhelmed, my heart racing, staring at my daughters. They had not only uncovered Dad's betrayal, but had executed an operation so precise, so perfectly timed, that our family's future was completely secure, and Dad had no idea it was happening right under his nose. Mom, you've been using the same password since I was 12, Natasha said gently. And technically, as your daughter, we still have the right to access the savings account. I realized in that moment that my girls had thought of everything. They had methodically dismantled their father's plan while simultaneously protecting our family's future. So, right now, I said slowly, letting it sink in, Boris thinks he's about to start a new life with Irina, using our money. Exactly, Lisa smiled. But in reality, his boss is getting ready to fire him. His mistress is having a meltdown over another man. And the stolen money mysteriously vanished. And he has no idea that it's all connected, Natasha added, grinning. I looked at my daughters, a mix of pride and anxiety churning in my chest. What would happen when he finally realized what had happened? The girls exchanged a glance, and in that look was something that made my heart skip a beat. This is it, Lisa said. This is where it gets really interesting. I didn't have to wait long to see the masterpiece my daughters had created in action. Just after 11:37 p.m., our front door burst open so forcefully the whole apartment shook. Klara. Boris's voice boomed through the hallway, filled with a rage I had never heard before. Where is my money? I sat on the couch in my pajamas, still processing my daughter's confession from earlier. Lisa and Natasha pretended to be asleep in their rooms, but I knew they were listening to every word. Boris stormed into the living room. His face was red, hair messy, and his usual perfect appearance completely ruined. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie gone, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. What money? I asked calmly, though my heart pounded wildly. Don't play dumb, he yelled, pointing at me. The account is empty. Every last ruble is gone. I stood slowly, meeting his furious gaze with a determination even I didn't know I had. You mean the money you stole from our daughter's savings? Boris's face went pale. How do you? He started, but I finished for him. About Irina, about your plan to abandon our family and start a new life in Sochi. About the deposit for the Adler apartment. I know everything. His mouth opened and closed like a fish stranded on the shore, utterly speechless. I could see the shock, the fear, and the realization dawning on him. For the first time, he understood that everything he had plotted, every selfish move he had made, had been anticipated and stopped by the very daughters he thought were naive teenagers. Boris stood there, frozen, trying to collect himself. Every muscle in his body tensed as he realized the depth of the disaster he was in. You can't do this. Give me back my money, he shouted, voice cracking with desperation. I shook my head slowly, my hands still trembling but my voice steady. It's not yours anymore. You spent it recklessly, thinking no one was paying attention. But we were. From their rooms, I could hear soft footsteps. Lisa and Natasha appeared almost magically behind me, calm and confident, faces lit by the glow of the hallway light. They didn't say a word, just stood there, letting Boris take in the full weight of what had happened. You think you're clever, Natasha said finally, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. But you forgot one thing. You raised 2 daughters smarter than you. Lisa stepped closer. Every move you made, every lie, every transfer, we documented it all. Every email, every transaction, every message to Irina. We even made sure your boss found the proof you used company time for personal schemes. Boris's face went even paler. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. His arrogance, the same arrogance that had fueled years of betrayal, was gone. He was completely exposed. And the money? I asked softly, though I already knew the answer. Natasha smiled. Back in its place, where it belongs. Safe. Every last ruble. Boris's knees buckled slightly, and he took a step back. You can't. You underestimated us, Lisa interrupted, her tone calm but firm. You thought we were just kids, but we've been planning for months. And now your plan is finished. Completely. He looked around, eyes darting between the 3 of us, panic finally breaking through his shock. What do I do now? I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady and measured. You do nothing. You lost. Every decision you made against your family has failed. And from now on, you will think twice before trying anything like this again. For the first time in 20 years, Boris was silent. No excuses, no protests, just the cold, undeniable truth of defeat. My daughters stood tall beside me, victorious. Their bravery, intelligence, and precision had not only saved our money, but had also reclaimed our family's power. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief, pride, and hope. My girls had not only fought for us, they had shown me that no one, not even their father, could ever destroy what we had built together. Klara, I can explain, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Explain what? I snapped, my voice hardening with every word. Explain how you lied to me for 7 months? How you planned to steal the future from your own daughters? How you called me boring and predictable in letters to your mistress? He took a deep, desperate breath. You don't understand. Irina and I, it's something special, real. With you, we've been living like neighbors for years. I couldn't believe the audacity of his words. And then he thought he could fix this by stealing from his own children? My daughters, who had been dreaming and working for their future. They're smart, he continued weakly, a pitiful edge creeping into his voice. They'll get into college on scholarships. They don't need the money as much as Irina, and I do, for our fresh start. I looked at the man I had lived with for 20 years, and a chilling thought struck me. I didn't know him at all. Not really. Where were you tonight, Boris? I asked, my voice low but cutting. His face twisted. Everything's falling apart, Klara. Krylova fired me. Said I used company resources for personal reasons, said I'm a disgrace to the company. And your mistress? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She won't pick up the phone, he admitted, sinking into the chair. Her husband found out about me, caused a huge scene in her office. She blames me for everything. Says I ruined her life. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of pity for him. Just a tiny flicker. Let's make this clear, I said, crossing my arms. You lost your job. Your mistress left you. And now you come crawling home looking for sympathy? I've made mistakes, he said, looking at me with eyes full of desperation. But we can fix everything. We can go to therapy. I'll make it right with you and the girls. By what money? I asked coldly. You stole everything we had. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, he exploded, leaping to his feet. The money is gone. Someone emptied the account we opened with Irina. All of it. 3.7 million just vanished. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. How terrible. Did you call the police? I can't, he shouted, panic rising in his voice. Why not? I asked, staring him down. Because the money was stolen from your own family, I prompted gently, letting the weight of my words sink in. Boris's face went through a storm of emotions as he realized the trap he had fallen into. He couldn't report the theft without first admitting his own theft. Klara, please, he begged, his voice breaking. I know it was you who took the money. Just return it, and we can fix everything. I didn't take anything, I said calmly and firmly. I was at work all day. I only found out about your affair tonight. He sank back into the chair, utterly defeated, his face pale and drawn. The confidence, the control, the arrogance, all of it gone. I could see it finally. The man who thought he could manipulate everyone, who thought he could steal his children's future, was powerless. For the first time, I realized that the world had shifted completely. The people he underestimated, his own daughters and me, were the ones in control now. Boris sat there, stunned, his hands gripping the arms of the chair like he was holding on to his last bit of control. I could see the fear creeping into his eyes, the first real fear I had ever seen from him. He had been so sure of himself, so confident that no one could touch his plans. But now, everything was unraveling. I don't understand, he stammered, his voice small. How did this happen? I stood, taking a slow, deliberate step closer. You forgot one thing, Boris, I said, my voice steady. You forgot that your daughters are smarter than you ever gave them credit for. They planned for this. They watched. They learned. And they acted. Boris's face turned pale, and for the first time, I saw panic. My daughters, he whispered, disbelief in his tone. Yes, I said, letting the word sink in. They knew about you, your lies, your plans, everything. And for 3 months, they worked quietly, carefully, to protect their future and ours. Do you know what that means? He shook his head, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find words that didn't exist. It means, I continued, my voice growing stronger, that your scheme to steal our money, to abandon your family, to start a new life with her, it's over. Every last cent is safe. Every bit of your manipulation has been undone. Your mistress has no money, your plans have no power, and you are completely exposed. He stared at me, and I could see him trying to piece it together, trying to understand how everything he thought was under control had slipped through his fingers. But how? He asked, his voice cracking. I had everything. I knew what I was doing. I shook my head slowly. You underestimated them. You underestimated us. Your daughters, my girls, they are clever, resourceful, and brave. They acted before you even realized you were in danger. And that is why you are sitting here, powerless, while the life you tried to steal from them remains intact. For a moment, silence fell over the room. Boris had nothing left to say, no excuses, no threats, no lies. He realized that every move he had made, every lie he had told, every plan he had set in motion had been outsmarted by the very people he thought were beneath him. I took a deep breath, letting the truth settle in. You wanted to control everything, I said softly, but control doesn't come from lies or money. It comes from trust, from love, from respect. And you destroyed all of that yourself. He slumped back, defeated, and for the first time, I saw him as just a man, flawed, vulnerable, and powerless. And in that moment, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. Sorrow that he had been so blind for so long, satisfaction that our family, my daughters, and I had survived, and even thrived, despite his betrayal. You will have to live with this, I said, my voice steady, with the knowledge that your choices didn't just hurt you, they almost destroyed your family. But we survived, and we will continue. Without you, with your betrayal behind us, we are stronger than ever. He didn't reply. He couldn't. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt the full weight of freedom, the weight of knowing that no one, not even him, could ever take our lives and dreams away again. And in that moment, I realized something else. The true power of a family isn't in money or control. It's in loyalty, courage, and love. And my daughters had shown me that, in a way that no one, not even Boris, could ever undo. Then who? Boris started to ask, but his words faltered. His eyes widened as they shifted toward the doorway leading to the girls' room. The girls, he whispered, almost in disbelief. At that moment, Liza and Natasha appeared in the doorway, still in their pajamas. They looked like the very picture of innocence, as if they had just woken up from the chaos of the shouting. Dad, Liza called softly, her voice calm and gentle. It's okay. You're yelling so loud. What's happening? Yeah, added Natasha, rubbing her eyes like she had only just woken up. Why are you so upset? Boris froze, staring at his daughters, and I could see it happen, the exact moment it dawned on him. 2 17-year-old girls had completely outsmarted him. He blinked rapidly, his mind racing. You did this? He asked slowly, pointing at them. The girls exchanged glances, their faces perfectly innocent. What did we do, Dad? They asked in unison, sweetly, as if they were unaware of anything at all. Boris's face contorted with anger, his eyes darting between them. You little, he started, but caught himself just in time. Even in his fury, he knew better than to finish that sentence. Girls, come here, I said firmly. I think it's time we had a serious talk. Liza and Natasha walked over, calm and collected, carrying themselves like professionals entering a boardroom. They sat on the sofa opposite their father, poised and confident, fully in control. Boris sat frozen, staring at the laptop screen, his mind spinning. For the first time, he realized just how completely he had been outsmarted. Two teenage girls, just 17 years old, had managed to unravel every secret, every plan, every lie he had carefully hidden for months. I don't understand, he whispered, voice cracking. How could this happen? You underestimated us, Natasha said softly but firmly. You thought we were naive. You thought we wouldn't notice, wouldn't care. But we did. We watched. We planned. And we protected our family. Liza leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We gave you plenty of chances, Dad. Plenty of chances to fix things. But you lied. You stole. You planned to run away with our money and leave us behind. We couldn't let that happen. Boris tried to speak, but words failed him. His mouth opened and closed as he searched for some excuse, some way to turn it around. But there was nothing. Every lie, every betrayal, every selfish decision had been documented, saved, and now exposed. Do you realize what you've lost? I asked, my voice steady, though my hands shook slightly. Your career, your love, your family's trust, everything. And it's all because you couldn't respect us, because you chose lies over honesty, selfishness over love. He swallowed hard, his face pale. I can fix this. I'll make things right. I'll get my job back. You think apologies and promises can fix 17 years of betrayal? I interrupted.
No, Dad.
You had your chance. You lost it. Everything you tried to steal, everything you wanted for your new life, it's gone. And you only have yourself to blame. The girls exchanged a look, small smiles of quiet victory on their faces. Boris's head sank into his hands. He looked broken, defeated, utterly powerless. He had been so sure of himself, so certain that he could control everything, that he could manipulate everyone. But he had failed completely, and the people he thought were the weakest had turned out to be the strongest. You need to understand, Natasha said quietly, this isn't about punishment. It's about truth. About justice. You wanted to take from us, to betray us, but we protected our family. We did what you never could. Liza nodded. And now, Dad, you have to face the consequences. You have to face yourself and what you've done. No tricks, no lies, no hiding. This is real. And it's over. Boris finally lifted his head. His eyes, once filled with arrogance and control, were now wide with fear and disbelief. For the first time, he realized he was completely exposed. Every secret, every lie, every plan was out in the open. There was nowhere to hide. The room was silent for a long moment. Just the quiet hum of the computer, the steady breathing of the girls, and the weight of everything that had happened hanging in the air. Then, slowly, I said, this is your life now, Boris. You have to live with it. And we are free. The girls smiled, small but victorious, and for the first time in months, I felt a rush of relief. Our family was whole again, not because of him, but because of them. Because of their courage, their brains, their heart. They had taken back what he tried to destroy, and nothing could ever take it from us again. I saw the moment Boris realized the full depth of his humiliation. His face twitched, his confidence shattered. He had destroyed his family for a woman who had played him just as cruelly as he had tried to play us. This is impossible, he whispered, his voice trembling. She loves me. She told you herself, Natasha interrupted sharply. She doesn't love you. She loves money. And now that Roman has left her because of you and you've lost your job, she doesn't want anything to do with either of you. Boris slumped in the chair, suddenly looking far older than his years, exhausted and defeated. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice weak and unsteady. The girls looked at each other, then back at me. They had already decided how to handle this after revealing the truth. We want you to leave, I said simply. Today. Pack your things and go. My house, he started weakly. No, Liza interrupted, pulling out a folder filled with papers. Technically, this isn't your house. The mortgage contract is in Mom's name only. You signed a waiver 5 years ago during refinancing. Remember? You said it was better for taxes. Boris's face fell. He realized he had trapped himself with his own choices. We've already spoken to a lawyer, Natasha continued. We have enough evidence for fraud and theft charges, but we're willing to make a deal. What kind of deal? Boris asked cautiously, fear creeping into his voice. You sign the divorce papers, leave everything to Mom, agree that the kids will live with her, leave the city and never return, Liza explained. In return, we don't go to the police. You can't be serious, Boris pleaded, looking at me desperately. They're children. You can't let them do this. I looked at the man I had spent 20 years with, the father of my daughters, the one I had shared a home, a bed and dreams with, and I felt nothing but disgust. You destroyed this family the moment you decided your mistress was worth more than your daughter's future, I said quietly. The girls didn't destroy anything. They saved what could still be saved. Boris stayed silent for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Fine, I'll sign your papers. But don't expect me to disappear forever. Actually, Natasha said with a small, sweet smile, we're hoping you disappear forever. Because if you ever try to contact us again, we'll release everything. Records, letters, proof of your theft. The whole city will know who you really are. Boris looked at each of us, searching for some sign of mercy, but found none. He had placed his trust in a woman who had used him and lost. I'll pack today, he finally said. I'll leave. When he went into the bedroom, Liza called after him. Dad, next time you try to steal from your family, at least change the passwords. At 6:23 a.m., the front door closed behind Boris. I watched from the kitchen window as he loaded the few belongings we allowed him to take into the car. He glanced back at the house one last time, but I didn't wave. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. The family savings account was restored and earning interest again. Liza was accepted to Sechenov University with a full scholarship and increased stipend. Natasha was admitted to MIPT for her Olympiad achievements, with full financial support. We never heard from Boris again. Sometimes I wondered if he ever realized that Irina had left for St. Petersburg with Roman. Meanwhile, my daughters created a Telegram channel called Teen Justice, helping teenagers deal with family crises and adult betrayals. Dozens of teens have already found support and protection through their work. I have never been prouder of them. They showed me that sometimes the people who love you the most are willing to fight to the death to protect you, and that justice can come from the most unexpected places. After that morning, life slowly started to settle into a new rhythm. The air in the house felt lighter, almost as if the walls themselves had been holding their breath for years and were finally exhaling. Liza and Natasha moved through their days with a quiet confidence that only comes from knowing they had faced something enormous and won. They poured themselves into their studies and their new project, Teen Justice. Each message, each piece of advice they sent out, carried the weight of experience and the hope that no one else would feel powerless in their own home. They weren't just helping other teens, they were shaping themselves into women who understood the power of courage and smart strategy. Moments of laughter returned to the kitchen, soft chatter filled the living room again, and even simple dinners felt like celebrations. I watched my daughters sometimes, just observing the way they moved, the way they smiled at each other, and felt a swell of pride that almost made my chest ache. These girls, who had faced betrayal and deceit at the hands of their own father, had come through unbroken and stronger than ever. Evenings became a time for reflection. We'd sit together with mugs of tea, going over the day, sharing small victories and funny stories from the Telegram channel. They told me about teens who had felt completely alone and how a single message of encouragement or a carefully guided tip from them could turn someone's life around. And through it all, I saw the incredible transformation, not just in the teens they were helping, but in themselves. Liza's leadership and Natasha's sharp intelligence shone in everything they did. I also noticed small, personal changes. Liza had started sketching again, filling notebooks with her ideas for a future that now felt limitless. Natasha had taken up coding projects, building small apps and tools to make Teen Justice even more effective. Their focus and determination were inspiring, but it wasn't just about work. It was about reclaiming control, proving that betrayal could not define them. Sometimes we would talk about Boris in passing, though carefully. We didn't dwell on him, but we acknowledged what had happened and how far we'd come. He was a shadow from the past, a lesson carved into our lives, but we refused to let that shadow dictate our happiness. Our family, fragile but resilient, was healing. And in those quiet moments, watching my daughters plan, organize, and help others, I realized something vital. Justice doesn't always come from courts or police reports. Sometimes it comes from bravery, intelligence, and the willingness to fight for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you. My girls had embodied that truth fully, and in doing so, they had given our family a future filled with hope, trust, and love. I knew one thing for certain. Our story was far from over. It was a story of survival, of cleverness, of taking back what was ours, and of proving that even in the darkest moments, strength and justice could shine through. And as I watched them continue their work, helping teens navigate the storms of their own lives, I felt a quiet certainty. The world was a little brighter because of them, and our family, once broken, had become unbreakable. After that morning, life in our home slowly began to settle into a new rhythm, a rhythm filled with relief, pride, and hope. The air felt lighter, almost as if the house itself had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled. Liza and Natasha moved through their days with quiet confidence, carrying themselves like young women who had faced something enormous and come out stronger on the other side. Every day became a lesson in resilience. Our mornings were calm but purposeful. Liza would sit at the kitchen table with her notebooks and sketches, quietly planning her next steps in school, in life, and for Teen Justice, the Telegram channel they had created to help other teens facing family betrayals. Natasha spent hours coding, refining tools, apps, and resources to help young people protect themselves, organize evidence, and find safe solutions. The girls were no longer just teenagers. They were leaders, mentors, and guardians for those who needed guidance.
Evenings were family time.
We'd gather around the table with mugs of tea, sharing stories from the day. Liza would recount messages from a teen who had finally stood up to a manipulative parent, while Natasha described a coding solution she had built that made it easier for a young girl to document her father's lies. The room would fill with laughter, small victories, and the quiet joy of connection. Our home was no longer tense or shadowed by fear. It was alive with energy, planning, and laughter. Sometimes, we spoke of Boris quietly, almost in passing, because he had become a shadow from the past. He was a lesson carved into our lives, a warning about betrayal and selfishness, but we refused to let that shadow define our present or future. Our family had been fractured, but now it was healing and growing stronger every day. Liza and Natasha's growth astounded me. Liza had begun sketching more than ever, filling entire notebooks with her designs, her ambitions, and her plans for the future. Natasha was building small apps for teen justice that made it easier for teens to anonymously report issues and get help. They had transformed pain and betrayal into purpose. Their courage and intelligence were the pillars that held our family steady. Word about teen justice began to spread. Teens from across the city, and even from other regions, started reaching out. Some were crying for help after discovering family secrets. Others needed guidance, navigating manipulative adults. Liza and Natasha responded to every message with patience, strategy, and care. They became a beacon of hope, showing that even in the darkest moments, there were ways to fight back, protect yourself, and stand tall. I watched them and felt an overwhelming surge of pride. These were my daughters, who had faced deception, dishonesty, and betrayal from the person who should have been their protector, and yet they hadn't broken. They had risen. They had not only saved our family, but were now helping others save theirs. I realized that justice didn't always come from courts or police reports. Sometimes, it came from intelligence, courage, careful planning, and the willingness to act when no one else would. As months passed, life continued to blossom. Liza earned a full scholarship to Sechenov University with an increased stipend for her exceptional achievements, while Natasha was accepted into MIPT, Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology, after winning national Olympiads in programming, also receiving full support. Our savings account, once stolen and nearly lost, was fully restored, accruing interest again, secure and untouchable. The house, once tense and shadowed by betrayal, had become a safe haven again. Boris faded from our lives. He never recovered his position or reputation, and we never heard from him again. Whether he realized what had truly happened with Irina and our in St. Petersburg, or the full scope of the consequences of his betrayal, remained unknown. But we didn't care. Our family was safe, whole, and stronger than ever. Liza and Natasha's Telegram channel, Teen Justice, flourished. Teens sent messages daily, sharing stories of family deception, manipulation, and abuse. Each time, the girls responded with empathy, practical advice, and strategies to protect themselves. They became role models, leaders, and heroes for those who thought no one could understand their pain. Their work inspired others, and I watched, amazed, as my daughters, still only 17, changed lives one message at a time. I often thought about what we had endured and what we had lost, but more importantly, about what we had gained. The betrayal had been a storm, fierce and violent, but it had forced us to rise, fight, and reclaim our lives. My daughters had shown me that love and loyalty are not just about family by blood, but about courage, action, and standing up for what is right. They taught me that sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected sources, from those you might least expect, like your own children, armed with determination, cleverness, and an unbreakable spirit. And so, life moved forward. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new victories. We laughed, we planned, we dreamed. Liza and Natasha continued to grow into remarkable young women, brave, smart, and fearless. And through it all, our family, once broken and betrayed, had become unbreakable, united by love, courage, and the knowledge that even in the face of lies and greed, truth and justice would always prevail. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit by the window and watch the city lights, thinking of how far we had come. My daughters, my girls, had turned pain into power, betrayal into strength, and fear into action. And I knew, without a doubt, that the world was brighter because of them, and that our family would never again be anyone's victim. We had survived, we had fought, and we had won.